Welcome back to the Woven Energy Podcast with me, Joseph Sikora, and as always, Damon Smith. We're here to talk about shamanism from the ground up. This week, we are going to be diving back into stage 4 of shamanic technique, and we are going to be looking at the energy change await, which I believe is number 5 in the traditional hexagram kind of order. So, Damon, do you want to just introduce... Well, first of all, do we have any Patreons to thank?
All of our patrons, as usual. Just a few names to shout out. I'm not going to explain why we're thanking these people. You guys know why we're thanking you. Ben Thernhofer, Mayor Bartley, Daniel Mann, Sebastian Lutic. You're all superstars. Thanks ever so much. And thanks to every patron that we've got. You guys are an awesome bunch. We're going to be meeting a lot of you in Austria in April next year.
Excellent.
So I'm really looking forward to that. Details are forthcoming. I actually earlier had a bit of a chat with Tamo where we bashed out a, I think, fairly exciting itinerary for the event. And so he'll be making that known to people shortly. So anyway, just thanks ever so much to our amazing tribe of superstar patrons. It's great.
Yep, thank you so much. Also, just one thing to mention, you have updated the Patreon area with a video, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh, there's going to be more than one. I've got another one which will be out by the end of the weekend. So I've started putting a bit of Grove content into Patreon. The Grove platform number 2 is just too much of an overhead for the busyness of everybody at the moment. So we're starting to stick some Grove content into Patreon itself because that's easy. Mm-hmm. And also I have a plan C for the Grove, which is underway, which includes me upskilling in some stuff. But plan C is for the Grove to go what's known as serverless, to use these new bleeding edge serverless technologies for the actual Grove. But like I say, we're not waiting. We're letting people have... So I've recorded a bunch of videos about different aspects of physical chillicity. The first one's been up for a while. It covered Till-In as well.
Till-In, yep.
Yeah, and the second one is going up shortly. It's available for Power patrons and Founder patrons in Patreon, and we will reduce the level at some point in the future. Once we've had good feedback of those guys, we'll reduce that requirement so that lower level, I don't know if you call them lower level patrons, they're still awesome patrons, that more patrons can get access to it over time. But yeah, so it's the start of something. We've got about 7 videos altogether done, so they're going to come out.
Excellent.
A bit like we release podcasts, we're releasing videos on Patreon as well. Yeah.
Yep, and as always, you can head to patreon.com/wovenenergy to support us over there, and of course, get some extra stuff, including that video that's already there, as well as more to come. So thank you ever so much, guys. So as I mentioned in the introduction, and we just had a quick chat before actually recording this episode, and you took umbrage to me using the word hexagram. So this is traditionally hexagram number 5, await, that we're going to explore. Do you want to give us a quick introduction to what that is, and also perhaps why we're not really talking about hexagrams here, rather the changes of woven energy?
Well, there's a couple of things. First, I think we've talked about this before, but just to cut a long story short, the changes came first and the Book of Changes came second, not the other way around. And so the Book of Changes, as we've discussed, can be a useful reference, especially in terms of expanding the breadth of the energy changes that you're utilizing within your shamanic technique. We usually talk in the context of spirit dance, but within any shamanic technique, doesn't matter what it is, could be drum, could be anything. The changes that you're utilizing, it forms a bit of not so much a reference, but a sort of catalogue of things you might not have thought of. That's probably the best way to look at the book. The problem with the Book of Changes, which is in its origins is highly shamanic. The problem with the Book of Changes is the Confucians got hold of it thousands of years ago and never let go. So
they meddled, did they?
They meddled on an industrial scale in the Book of Changes. So things like the order that they're introduced in and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the traditional order that they're introduced in the book, but we ain't following it. We started with 1 and 2, persist and yield. but we're not following the order anymore. We're not jumping ahead to 5. We're just doing a weight now. Yeah, and a weight is number 5 if you're interested in the Book of Changes. The order, there is some sense to it. I don't really want to spend a lot of time going in. I mean, the order in the traditional Book of Changes, there is some sense to it. But not only that, in terms of what comes next, that we're doing these things in pairs. The Book of Changes does them in pairs. But we're not doing 5 and 6. We're doing 5 and 35, which are a pair. And if you use the Book of Changes as your grounding in this stuff, then you will quickly get confused, which is what the Confucians want to happen to you. Don't look. They're just mutually supportive pair. Await and grow are the Armabella names for them. And in the Book of Changes, they happen to be number 5 and number 35. And they are actually a pair in that each one is just like the last pair we did, persist and yield, each one is the exact opposite of the other in terms of the...
So await and grow is what we might call a 2-in-1.
Yeah, a 21 was the Armabella terminology, but a 21. Futatsu Totsu, if you want to say it in Japanese. They're a 2-in-1 pair. That's right. So, await, what's this about? I think it's quite important. It's why I wanted to do it quickly. We sort of, with persist and yield, we sort of got people moving, didn't we? We got people moving in terms of energy. Obviously, this is going out to people who are pretty experienced at level 3. So I'm not going to start explaining loads of level 3 stuff. We'll just be here all week. So basically, applying or coming to an understanding of the energy changes within your level 3 stuff, I think we set a good scene or foundation for that with the first pair of changes that we addressed in this level 4 series. But now this is more like an attitude or a state of being, a way of being within the dance. And we use the word await in Armabella, but it sort of is. But what are you awaiting? That's the thing. It alludes to the empty vessel of Chalisti. In a way, you're awaiting your empty cup that you bring to nature, hopefully empty cup, to be filled by what Miki would have called the Jikimotsu. Jikimotsu is that knowledge or wisdom, understanding that the shaman derives directly from nature. It's the learning that the shaman picks up. You know, when I say learning, I don't mean baseline learning. I don't mean just mental learning. I mean learning in the mind and spirit and body, all acting as one. Yep. It's that learning that is picked up directly from nature, or at least that part of it that doesn't involve any other human beings. It doesn't involve any beliefs, faith, judgments, culture, news, all that kind of stuff, religion, obviously. It doesn't involve any of that stuff. It's just the stuff that comes straight to you as a shaman from nature without any other involvement. That's the Jikimotsu. The await is about drawing a pattern with your energy thread that waits on or waits upon changes that go on in the macrocosm. So you want to think about it. You're hanging in the moment. So that would be you are, if you like, persisting in the microcosm within yourself without any desire for what's coming next. We're talking about in the dance. So the dance is already underway. You're in the dance. You're hanging in the exact moment that you're in. You have no desire for what comes next. And you have no thought for what's gone past. You're just there hanging in the moment. And it's a foundational skill of spirit dance. It's so important. Hanging within that moment allows, in the macrocosm, to influence you. And this is what my teacher Sifu Ryan calls the needle in the cotton in the macrocosm. It's almost yield. So again, you can see why I've picked this one out now. We've got persist in the microcosm, working with yield in the macrocosm. But there's one slight difference. The needle is in the cotton of the macrocosm. That, if you want to think of it in terms of trigrams, that middle bar of the macrocosm trigram is solid. You're awaiting the yang, the knowledge that nature is going to put into you by persisting within yourself and just hanging in the moment. And in a way, it's not just like a waiting, it's like awaiting nourishment, or awaiting the jikimotsu, awaiting the divine dew to come to you. You're sort of biding, you're looking out for. You do have that Bura Chikatarate from your bat. You are looking out for that. This is why it's sort of like await is a sort of okay word. You're sort of looking out for something, but you're not deciding what that something is. You're just patiently waiting, like the eagle soaring in the sky. The eagle doesn't know whether it's going to get a frog or a marmot or a rat or what it's going to get. It's just looking out. But it is awaiting. But it doesn't have a lot going on. There's not a lot of mental activity going on. There's not a lot of activeness going on. It's simply persisting within itself, hanging within the overarching thread of the dance. And waiting with a lot of patience, because you may have to wait a long time, you never know, for nature, for that needle in the cotton to stick in you. Sorry to use the analogy. For nature to stick that needle in the cotton into you. Yeah. So you want to think in terms of the trigrams, your base trigram, in terms of the 64 hexagrams, your base trigram, your microcosm trigram is all the yangs. And your macrocosm trigram isn't all the yins, it's yin top line, but it's a solid midline and a yin baseline. And that solid midline, as you know, midline's to do with the physicality, universal law, the laws of nature, the laws of physics, all that kind of stuff. You are persisting within the baseline in order to be influenced by that record needle. Think about it like a needle in the groove of a record. That record needle that nature is going to play on you. Yeah. So maybe it's almost like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an analogy. I can't think of any ones that aren't exactly right, but I was thinking maybe like a Morse code, something like that, or the needle on in a way, the record is driving the needle. So maybe think about mastering a vinyl record where the needle is actually cutting the groove. That's more like what nature is doing to you. You're the blank record, and nature is cutting a groove on you with its needle in the cotton, cutting knowledge into you with the needle in the cotton. This is utterly foundational, because this gets to the heart of why are we doing spirit dance in the first place. The whole point of spirit dance, like all shamanic technique really, is to put yourself in a place where nature can teach you something without the stuff that's in you and the stuff that other people around you have, without that stuff getting in the way. So that's a kind of general description of what a wait is about. And it's a state that has to be practiced. In some ways, it is chillicity. It's like chillicity done well. But when you're talking about level 4, we're talking about chillicity done very, very well. It has components, but at this level, within this kind of change, because this is a change, it's a change in that it's a changing state, in that there's something active going on. You're not changing. The environment and the dance and the patterns are changing you. And this is like foundational to everything else that we're going to cover on level 4. Absolutely foundational, which is why I wanted to do it next. You have to learn to get yourself into that awaiting state. Now, that awaiting state is chillicity, but if you like, it's because you have to have the emptiness. You have to present the empty cup to nature for nature to, or the blank vinyl. I don't know what the master vinyl record's on. It's probably metal or something. The blank disc for nature to cut that groove in, to cut that information into, to cut the divine music into, the kagura into. Because that's the real meaning of kagura, is the divine music. Now, that's a spirit dance, the oldest form of spirit dance that's got a name in Japan. That's what it's all about. It's about nature driving into you, and in a way it's like being a good student of nature. You know, people say shamanism is about making nature your teacher rather than having a human being as your teacher. That's why we've said many times we don't like using the word teacher in terms of shamans teaching other shamans. That's more like a guide, right? The real teacher here is Mother Nature. But then the question of a weight is, and which is why it's important at level 4, you have to be a good student of nature. You have to be there and accepting and ready for nature to cut the information into you. I'm only using the word cut because of that needle in the cotton. Tattoo. Maybe nature's going to tattoo the jikimotsu into you, something like that. But you have to be a willing participant in that. Almost.
You have to be a blank record. I like that. It's a music analogy.
Yeah.
You've got to be a blank record, and nature cuts its spirit into you.
Yeah, but it's not just a blank record, a passive blank record. That blank record needs Burachik, which I bet a real blank record doesn't need. But it needs to be active. It needs to be, it's an active hanging in the moment without desire and without thought. But it's active. It has its tendrils or claws or reach, spiritually speaking, out into nature and is waiting, looking out for the needle coming out. I don't know, I picked the best analogy using a needle, you know. But it's do you follow what I mean? It's an actively blank state, not a passively blank state. And this is why it's important to talk about at level 4, because there is an energy to it.
A passively blank slate, being a passive record, that would be more like yield?
Yeah, that would be more like yield. So this is an actively blank state. It is an energy state, and it is a change. And I don't just mean going into this state is a change. So you change into the state and you change out of it. I mean, it is a constant change. It's a constantly ongoing change that remains the same within you, but the change doesn't remain the same within nature that's influencing you. And that's why it's an ongoing change. It's not a static thing. Does that make some kind of sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's a really important distinction because a lot of people don't get this when they start trying to practice spirit dance. And understandably, this is level 4 stuff. It's more advanced stuff. It's what should I do to do my spirit dance? Well, a weight is one of the things that you should do in order for nature to do your spirit dance for you. That's the probably way to think about it. So in a way, this is your joining. This is the root of your joining into the environment in which you're performing your spirit dance, and also into the emerging weave that your spirit dance is creating in conjunction with the weave that's already there within the environment. This is that linking point. Wait, this is the change, the ongoing change that is, it may not be there when you start your dance, and it may not be there at the end of the dance, but during that dance, along with the persist, where you have to persist the overarching thread of the dance, which in a way is something that you're kind of doing in conjunction with nature, you also have to persist the link to nature, which is something that you're doing, but nature is making happen, not you. So, and it's a foundational practice at level 4. It's something that you need to work on hard because it isn't easy. It's very, very easy at level 4 to sort of overturn everything. within the microcosm, because it does feel good as well, you take command of a bit like my shamanic Tai Chi, you take command of the flow of the energy and you make it change and you make it whirl and you make it swell and all this kind of stuff, which is great fun, and it is an important skill set, and it is a level 4 skill set. There's nothing wrong with that in a certain way. And you could say there's a way to think about it. It's level 4 technique, but it's not really shamanism. This is shamanism. This is a weight. It's not the things that nature make you do. There are other changes, that fall out of this. And we're going to talk about the changes that fall out of a weight. But it is the ongoing change in which you maintain that link. And it is not easy because there's various things that can distract you from it. One is practicalities. You're moving around and there's a log in your way and your stellicity collapse and stuff. That's more beginner kind of issues. But the thing that can really distract you here, once you really start going with this, one of our patrons, you probably won't mind me saying, Mika, sent some video we had a look at of him doing his spirit dance, which is absolutely fantastic. Very well done, Mika. Amazing. It's great fun to make that kind of stuff happen. But you can get a bit caught up in your own energy. I'm not saying Mika did in that video. I'm just saying it's great that we got patrons and listeners who are actually practicing this stuff at a fairly decent level. It's absolutely amazing. That's what we started this podcast for, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so,
for sure.
The key point is that although that's fun and it's important to have that skill at a certain level, getting caught up in your own energy can distract you. And keeping the await state going, think of it as something like setting a record going. You start your spirit dance and then there's this await thing going all the time, and you maintain it throughout. Just in the same way you maintain in your energy thread, you maintain the await as well. And you have to practice this. How will you know if you're getting anywhere with it? One of the big things with a good skill in await is that you rarely get caught out by anything. So say you're dancing in among the trees, which is one of my favorite things. You're never going to, run into a branch or unless you want to, unless the overarching thread wants you to. But what I mean is you're not going to get caught out by that. It's going to happen, but you're not going to get caught out.
Be a mean and vindictive nature to throw you into a tree. But yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be dealt with in a very energy compliant kind of way. You trip up, but you won't fall down. That's one of the ways I've described a lot of things in shamanism. You'll trip up, but you won't fall down. Because you're awaiting all of these things and you don't know what they're going to be. And that's another really important aspect of await. When you do your spirit dance, so it's certainly at level 3, I'm now going to work on this technique, or I'm now going to work on that technique. That's you sort of deciding what's going to happen. The key with await is that the foundation of await is you don't know, because your macrocosm is static, it's persisting. Your microcosm is persisting. It's only the macrocosm that knows what's going to happen, and you absolutely do not. And that's a fantastic skill to pick up on in spirit dance, because that's what turns spirit dance from a cool, fairly powerful energy dance. You could have a term energy dance, couldn't you? And you could have a kind of spirit dance that didn't really stress this kind of skill set. It could be very powerful. I mean, in a way, Tai Chi is to a certain extent like that. It could become very powerful. And it would be fun. I know it's tremendous fun, just making all kinds of weird and wonderful energy weaves. But it wouldn't really be shamanism. And so this is why await is such an important practice. If you want to be a shaman and you're starting or you're getting into your level 4 kind of practice, do not forget or neglect await as the change in terms of what you're doing. You need to maintain that link between you and nature, but it's not completely passive. It's not wet or soppy. Just, we accept whatever you do to us, nature. It's not that kind of thing. Whatever will be kind of. It's not that. That's exoteric nonsense, that stuff. It's actively participating with nature, but allowing nature to take the lead. But it's still a kind of partnership, right? It's still kind of you and nature dissolving into each other. And in that dissolution, I'm giving away stuff now because I realize I just laid out some concepts around the next alchemy tutorial episode on heretics, but never mind. Within that dissolution, nature is given the lead. You're not, and within that dissolution, it's very easy for you to take the lead. So it's really about clamping down on yourself and making sure that you don't have sort of. Here's another term I've never used before: energy arrogance. Within the weave, yeah. A weight is about losing energy arrogance within the weave, but that doesn't mean you just stop or you're just completely passive. There's an activity to it. There's a patience within it, but you are looking out. You're looking out for something. Looking out for what? You do not know. That's the point. You have no idea what it's looking out for, but whatever it is, bring it on. It's awesome. Yeah, that's the kind of, it's an active, Miki called it yoki. Yo means yang. Ki means energy. Yoki. It's an active, cheerful, because that term yoki also means like cheerfulness or joyousness or something like that. It's an active and cheerful awaiting without expecting. Yeah, so awaiting without expecting. That's why this hexagram, or this energy change in our ability is why we called it await and not expect. That's.
Do we have any inference words for this one?
Yeah, we got await nourishment, bide, look out for, patience, wait for. Those were our inference words for it. And the as I said, the outer trigram is torrent and the inner trigram is jag. So you've got that sort of aspect of persist and you've got aspect of yield, which we talked about all of those already. The only thing to think about is that nature isn't being passive in this interaction. And that's why the middle line of the outer trigram is yang and not yin. But I think we already covered the foundation for a weight with the first two. So then we got the question of what's its counterpart? What's the one we're going to talk about next? That would be grow. So that's number 35 in the traditional book of changes. So I do apologize for jumping about. It's not my fault. I didn't choose the order. I'm not sure.
I'll just ask you one thing. So the order that we are introducing them in here makes the most sense to you in terms of how we want to progress through through the woven energy stage 4. It's like it's just what makes the most sense to talk about, rather than restricting yourself to what's specifically in the book of changes.
Confucian precedent is not something that I've ever felt the need to follow, to be honest. But what I'm really thinking here is, I'm thinking somebody's getting okay at their spirit dance. Their level 3 is okay. They want to start working on level 4. What are good things for them to start practicing first? To give them a good foundation, a good solid foundation for the rest of the weird and wonderful stuff that's going to be going on within the energy changes within their dance. What are good things for them to know about or to start practicing right from the beginning? And this one is one of them. And so is number 35, grow, which we'll come on to. So we're going to do an episode on grow, so we'll come back to that. But just to give you, I'll give the inference words for grow so you can understand how it's sort of the opposite and sort of not the opposite. They're sort of mutually supportive. Grow is inferred by advance, expand, flourish, impregnate, increase, progress, prosper, and rise. And so what we're talking about with grow in terms of your spirit dance is we're talking about the weave itself. Grow is about advancing, expanding, making the weave flourish, impregnating the weave with changes that give rise to greater and more interesting things, increasing the overarching richness and variety and depth of the weave, progressing the weave onwards, prospering within the context of nature, and rise, this kind of feeling of elevation, this quickening that we've talked about before that grows within your spirit dance, especially when you start getting good at this sort of energetic, which is level 4, the energetic level of it. You get this sort of quickening within it. The rise, the whole sensation of the whole thing like rises in a spiritual sense. That's to give you an idea of what the 2 and 1 is. But you can see immediately from that, we'll do a whole episode on it, but we can see immediately from that short description that without a weight, there ain't going to be any grow. It's not going to happen. Yeah. All of those things happen in real spirit dance through the impetus of nature. So if you don't have nature's needle in your, I was going to say cotton, in your yang, nature's needle in your change, in your ongoing change that's within your dance, then these things won't happen and you get frustration. For instance, if you practice them the other way around, you try to advance, expand, flourish, increase and all that kind of stuff with your energy weave, well, you will, but you'll end up doing energy dance, not spirit dance. It's a weight that allows that stuff to be driven by nature. You are awaiting nature, and you wait on nature as long as you need to. That's another thing, in general, this is just more general advice. This advice would apply to your level 3 as well. You just wait how long you need to do it. I've been asked lots of times, how long should I do my spirit dance for? That's a really, really bad question. The question comes from such a bad place. You start your spirit dance when you start it, when the spirit takes you, and you finish when you finish. And what's really interesting when you do it with that kind of an attitude, especially if you're in a good state of chillicity, a really good state of chillicity, you think you've done a certain amount of time of spirit dance. And there's another way you'll know if you're getting on with a weight and with your chillicity in general within your dance. You think you've done half an hour, and it turns out you've done an hour and a half. That's a good sign. When the dance feels like it went on for a lot less time than it actually did, that's a really, really good sign. But never decide to stop it. Well, we'll come on to this in a minute. We'll come on to this. What I mean by decide, you within your macrocosm, within your energy arrogance, don't decide to stop it. Something might decide to stop the dance, but you don't in that way. Yeah. We're going to come on to something in just a minute.
Is there something practical that someone can do to train this particular aspect of stage 4, this await, or is it something more that you just want to be aware of in your general stage 4 practice?
It's hard to do. So yeah, it's the latter. It's hard to do, and you need to, it's the AMSCA level of awareness. This is why you need to practice await, you need Titanic AMSCA level 2, because you have to have developed a really strong sense of that lightweight observation of self. Otherwise, this stuff is all going to get dragged down onto the baseline and the whole thing's going to collapse. I mean, the chillicity tower is going to collapse, right? So you do need, but it should be obvious. It should go without saying that to do level 4 stuff, your level 2 stuff has to be strong. Yeah. You're building like a pagoda, right? If your level 2 is shaky, then that's not going to work. So the AMSCA, lightweight observation of self, so it's not like I'm checking myself now that I'm doing a weight now at every given point. No, if you've practiced your AMSCA level technique, you have that lightweight observation of self, you have an awareness, a lightweight awareness. And what I mean by lightweight is it's a level of awareness that doesn't affect what you're doing. It doesn't affect your chillicity. It doesn't interfere with what you're doing. It's just there. And so if through your AMSCA level awareness, it is apparent that a weight isn't there, then there's some practice needed. A weight needs to be there. But there are specific things you can do if you've got access to. I do apologize to all regular listeners that I'm always harping on about mixed deciduous woodland, but I do love the stuff. So if you're doing your dance in a normal grove with an open flat space and stuff, that's maybe not the best place to practice a weight. You want to be in among the trees, in among the bushes, in the undergrowth, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to go at 300 miles an hour, or you might, when you start learning it to begin with, you might get ripped to shreds by brambles and thorns and all that kind of stuff. But just in among the trees, and it's like, just see where the weave takes you And you'll know a weight's on because you'll see, I mean spiritually see, you'll see nature gifting you this stuff. Nature will gift you everything. This is what the Terrell position is about. Incidentally, that's the next video of the grove that's going to appear inside Patreon. It's on Terrell. It's like you're reaching out to embrace whatever it is that's coming. A tree, a branch, something running along the ground, a bird, a gust of wind, whatever's coming. You're reaching out to, spiritually speaking, and physically, if you're doing Terrelt, because, these shamanic postures, these shamanic positions, they're there to influence through the physical, they're there to influence the spiritual. You're welcoming. There's a welcoming sense in there. And welcoming the needle of nature to come and teach you at all given points in time. So in among the trees is great because you'll see things. You'll start to see things. You'll know when you're getting on with a weight because those things that go and influence your dance, you'll start to see them. I don't just mean with your eyes. I mean, you'll start to sense them, to feel them. So a great one, for instance, a gust of wind comes, say to your shoulder or something, and you just turn with it instantly. You know a weight was there because you were waiting that wind. You didn't know exactly what wind it was going to be or what it was going to be, but the fact that a weight was on allowed you to instantly react to it. The instant reaction itself is other changes, but the weight change must have been there for you to deal with it very, very elegantly and very, very promptly. Do you follow what I mean? That's the thing. Yeah. So get in among the trees where your spirit dance. Not all the time. Sometimes do it around a bonfire out in the grove, wherever you want to do it. Toshalteen, toshalteen, toshalteen. But you want as much nature as possible. You want to, or get in the water under a waterfall or whatever. Down by the beach, allow the waves to influence you, whatever it is. But you'll know when you respond, whatever that change is, that you're not deciding what it's going to be. That's why I could just give you examples. I don't know what the change is going to be. I never know what the change is going to be when nature throws things at me. But the thing is, I welcome it, whatever it is, because I know it's going to be awesome. That's the await. I'm actively, to a certain extent, awaiting enthusiastically for Jikimatsu.
So yield, the difference between yield and await then. So yield is more being open and receptive to what is going to come, whereas await is very similar. It's just the attitude that we have when that comes to us.
You've just given me an idea.
Similar.
You've just given me an idea, which I'll say before I do. You got a little dog, yeah? Like a little pug or something. I like pugs. You come home. The little dog's dead pleased to see you. It runs up to you. It doesn't know what on earth you're going to do, but it's just looking up at you expectantly. Are we going to have fun? Are we going to do something? You, in your dance, become the little pug to nature. Yeah, nature's just come home, and you don't know what nature's going to decide for you to do, but you're all enthusiastic. Your tail's wagging. Your tongue's maybe hanging out. I don't know, like a pug or whatever. But something awesome's going to come. And that's very different from just yield by itself, right? Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's like I've said before, it's like the real challenge for this stuff is not thinking that each of these changes is its own separate thing and you've got to learn about all that. You've got to learn about the separate changes and put them in a box. It's just, it makes a lot more sense when you can zoom out and it's all part of a much bigger picture. They're just small pieces that don't perhaps make sense on their own. But like with await and yield, they're so similar with just a slight tweak that it makes much more sense when you can kind of see that and you don't see await as just one confined little thing. I guess a bit like a big jigsaw, right? All the pieces are the changes inside the big jigsaw. The pieces don't make that much sense on their own, but when you start piecing them together, the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts.
So let's quickly whip through what I don't want to do is give on each of these episodes that we do on a specific change, I don't want to give too much away for the other ones. If we spent, what I want to talk about now is the changes that are likely to fall out of this change, to fall out of await. I don't want to. So what I'll do is I'll just very briefly run through them. I think we overdid this bit on some of the other ones, some of the other two. So let's just briefly run through them. The most likely change to fall both into and out of, this is a two-way change, both into and out of a weight is connect. And that should be obvious. This is to connect with a common source, to connect. Nature stabs nature's little knowledge needle into you. I'm using a metaphor here, right? There's no literal needle. There might be, it might be like a needle blown off. If you're in the pine trees or whatever, and then pine needles are flying around, it might literally be a needle. But the connection with that, nature puts the knowledge in, you connect with it. And you connect together in a common source with nature through that. So it should be obvious that's the most likely, because that's the change you want to come out of it. That's the change you want to happen. The next most likely one is to complete, which has inference words like accomplish, achieve, bring to completion. This is what I was talking about. When you start your dance, don't decide when you're going to stop. And even when it comes to the point of your dance, don't decide you're going to stop. Allow nature to decide when you're going to stop for you. That's the complete change. And that makes some kind of sense. Again, nature's putting the knowledge into you. And in a way, I feel like this in my spirit chance. Sooner or later, nature says, okay, we're done now. For now. Yeah. That's when you bring your dance to completion. Yeah. Nature brings your dance to completion. You don't. The next one is to limit, which is limit. The change is limit, which is like about distinguishing between things, creating boundaries between things, setting limits. It's something that's probably going to leave for a while because it's a bit more advanced. It's a bit Mir and Shadi. So we'll come to that one a lot later. The next most likely is decide. This is really important. We talked about it a bit, but again, if you decide, if you make the decision, then, and this is about how your technique actually changes, where the changes come from within your weave. As you change from one dance technique to another at your level 3 stuff, what is deciding that at the level 4 is all this idea of branching. We talked about the circle dance in Mongolia, and the shamans branch off and do their own thing and then reconnect as they go back. Also determining, breaking through, resolving, making a decision in inverted commas. So this is a spiritual decision, not a mental one. All of that stuff is good stuff in spirit dance. What makes your radar for nature rich and varied and delightful and flavorsome. That change does, but that change has to be driven from the right place. And the right place to drive that change is the one it's most likely to fall out of, which is this change, a weight. So your decisions are made by nature effectively. The decisions about the branching and breaking off and changing and new energy going in, all that kind of stuff, are not made by you within the dance, they're made by nature. The better you are at a weight, the richer your dance is going to be. Obviously, you need a bunch of level 3 technique, but that goes without saying when we're talking about level 4. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the next one is expand to permeate. It's quite advanced, but basically a weight is the basis of more higher level shamanism. It's heading towards Nechdel type of ideas to connect, to diffuse and permeate, to start to pervade nature. So this is about, out of that await state, this is where at more advanced levels, but also at level 4, you start to diffuse. This is the first level, level 4. I've said this a few times. This is the first level where sense of self starts to dissolve a bit. And so expand, when we talk about expand, we're going to be talking about that quite a lot. You diffuse, harmonize with nature. That you start to permeate nature, and nature starts to permeate you. It's almost like the ocean is nature and you're a tea bag, and you get thrown in the ocean, and the water inside and the water outside are the same water. They're not the same water. But we'll talk a lot about that on the expand episode, which may be a big one. And then we have finally accumulate, which is the next most likely change. This is all about, that record we talked about. It's very simple. That record we talked about, that nature is carving that groove in, is accumulating something, isn't it? The needle's only carving one little bit, but it's accumulating the performance. I don't know what it is, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or something, whatever it is. It's accumulating that performance. And this is a very natural change and a desirable change to fall out of a weight, because that's where you're accumulating the knowledge that nature's teaching you. It's pointless getting it and then throwing it away, though it can be a very, very pleasant experience, it has to be said. I guess you'd call that real high-level animism. But yeah, you as a shaman, you're hoping to learn something through this process. And also sort of to restrain it, to tame it. Nature is a very wild and amazing and diverse thing, but it has to be collected. The Jikimotsu is so huge, it has to be collected, gathered together in some way. It has to be brought together. Not necessarily, ideally not changing it in that way, but it's too big for any person to accommodate. That's the issue. And so there has to be some sort of collection of it, gathering of it, in order to bring it under some kind of management, not management, but manageable proportions. That's what the word I'm looking for. That accumulates important in that. So there's more of a quick run through of the changes that are likely to fall out of it. But I think that's good for this one in terms of what I wanted to go over. That is a way to...
It's a nice advertisement of what's to come.
Just
to go deeper and deeper into stage 4.
Just to make the point that I'm saying a weight is very, very important. Not in general. I think it is in general, in shamanism in general. But I'm saying that we're addressing it early in our level 4 series because I think it's something you should be working on. If you've got good level 3 and you're the sort of person who's up for doing some level 4, a weight's something you should be working on early and making sure you start off. What I mean is, if you start off without an awareness of the weight change, you could go quite a long way and realize then you've got an awful lot of reworking to do with your spirit dance, that you've missed something. So getting started with the difficult change of a weight right from the outset, I think is a really good idea. Just to save yourself heartache and lots of extra work later on.
And to somebody who is very experienced in stage 3 and ready to do that, it's generally, and generalizing here, an attitude change in terms of approaching your spirit dance now.
As long as we need to do
the happy pug waiting to see
pug.
You.
The happy pug is a great one. Yeah, if you haven't seen the happy pug waiting for something awesome to happen, then I'm sure there's some great YouTube videos of pugs. They're gorgeous little dogs. Just have a look on YouTube probably, and you'll see what I mean immediately. In what a civilized person would call insane enthusiasm. And it's got a lot of Torshul Tien about it as well, but this is more a passive enthusiasm. You don't know what's going to happen, but whatever it is, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Okay. Sounds good. So I'm just debating in my head whether to go a little bit further on that attitude thing. But what do you reckon?
I don't know, mate. I really need to get going, to be honest. So should we just wrap it up? Is that right?
Yep, that's okay. Okay.
Because we're covering grow. We're covering grow next time, and we'll get back to it on that.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you ever so much for listening, and I really hope you've enjoyed this one. You can support us, as always, at patreon.com/wovenenergy, and we will see you in the next one.
On Grow. Yeah.
On Grow.
All right, all the best, guys. Thanks a lot.
See you soon.